Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing well out there, having a fantastic start to your day. A great week out there so far as we're about midway through it. Got you an update on what's going to happen weather-wise for today. Severe weather returns to the picture as we have a slight risk for areas of the Ohio Valley, the actual state of Ohio, and areas of western PA. I'm expecting a nasty line of storms that could potentially work through areas of these two states. A little bit later tonight, we'll get detailed with that. The rest of the country, relatively quiet. There's going to be some rounds of rain for certain areas, like the leftovers of Harold is going to be surging through areas of southwest Texas and maybe southern sections of New Mexico and even Arizona. We'll talk a little bit on that, and we'll just talk about the heat. But stay tuned towards the second half of the video. We'll give you a big update on the tropics. So if you're really just tuning in for an update on the tropics, there will be timestamps up in this video where you can just skip ahead to the section of the video you want to tune in to. So always want to stay true to these morning forecasts. There's a lot of people that just want to know what's going on weather-wise for today, and I always want to make sure I save a lot of my energy for that, and then we'll figure out all the other stuff in the second half of the video. And then stay tuned for the evening videos. A lot of times I make 2 videos a day when things are getting active, and the tropics is pretty active right now. We need to figure out what Franklin's going to do. It could threaten Bermuda. Potentially could get really close to maybe like Nova Scotia. Definitely not saying we're going to get an impact, but certainly saying we need to watch out for those areas. And then we're watching kind of an area of energy that could potentially go from the Pacific to the Atlantic side. And we're not going to get super detailed on that. You might see some scary information out there saying, the Gulf of Mexico potentially could see a threat, maybe the Gulf states. But, just be careful what you believe. We don't know that kind of information right now. So, try to just don't wholesale believe everything that you hear being talked about, things like that. Don't get scared or anything like that. The model runs can be very crazy and things like that. So with that being said, if you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. You guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over? As always, please put those in the comments below. Let's get rolling this morning. Water vapor loop. And we're going to probably, until we're done with hurricane season, take a broad look at what's going on. I think this is better than just zoning in or zooming in on the lower 48, just because we're in hurricane season. We need to figure out what's going on out there in the ocean also. So let's see if our clicker is working, and it is. So let's talk about a couple features out here. First, we have this dominating high pressure. It is pretty much just over this entire region right into here, and then it kind of comes down like this. And then we have a flow that pretty much kind of goes like this. So I know that's kind of a weird circle, but high pressure right over this region right here, probably a little bit further east actually. So we have just very hot weather. We already know this. This is nothing new. It needs to be old. It needs to be old news. We need to get this out of here. I got a lot of comments asking Mitch, when is this ridge going to be over with? When is the heat going to be done? There is some signs, I would say, mostly for the eastern U.S. If you live, the further east you work, the more hope there is. But we're going to get rid of this eventually, guys. We just got to get through it. And a lot of times when you get this dominating ridge of high pressure entrenched into the pattern, it is very, very difficult to get it out of here. And sometimes you need a very dynamic storm system to really knock it out of here, whether that's a tropical system, a massive cold front. Sometimes it just takes a blockbuster weather event to really knock these patterns out of place. Not always, but sometimes. We got the leftover of Harold right into here. If you see this big plume of white right here in western sections of Texas, that is just cruising along under this ridge. And then we got this upper trough right into this region. We're going to talk about this later in the video. This is actually helping to steer what is Franklin, which is right here, will make an actual landfall over the Dominican Republic, already bringing a lot of rains and strong winds over the Dominican Republic this morning. And then it's going to merge on the north side of the Dominican Republic, and we got to figure out what it is going to do after that. The remnants of Emily is trying to reform this morning. It actually has, I believe, a 60% chance to develop back into Tropical Storm Emily, so that's new, but it's not going to bother anybody. So Bermuda right here, we got to watch Bermuda. Outside of that, we got a pretty stout flow out the northwest going through this area, and this is actually what's going to prompt some severe weather in Ohio and areas of western PA. So that's kind of what's going on right there, right now, and that is pretty much going to be the pattern over the next couple days. So let's go on and get this off your screen, and let's keep this rolling. Let's take a look at what's actually falling out there, and you can see the ridge pretty well, right? I mean, you got the flow coming out the south, and then it comes out the southwest, and then it comes out the west, and then it comes out the northwest down to the southeast, and then you see these showers kind of off the coast of the Carolinas. You see how they're kind of drifting somewhat from the northeast to the southwest. I mean, it pretty much tells you what's going on. You see the flow around this high pressure, and everybody directly or even close to this high pressure has a lot of sinking air, a lot of stagnant air, just hot, flowless air. You're probably barely struggling to get a breeze under this high pressure. But you see where all the rain is going around it, right? I mean, you can look at water vapor all day long, but you can actually look at what's falling from the sky, and you can tell the pattern and what's going on. You got troughing out west, so it's a little bit below average. You got troughing over the northeast, and just a dominating ridge of high pressure over the middle of the country with the leftovers of Harold down here. So that's what's going on right now. No severe weather, steady stream of rain in the eastern UP, northern areas of Michigan. You guys let me know if these storms are packing a punch up here in northern Michigan, but they will potentially pack a punch later on in the day period as we get into the overnight hours when we need to watch for some severe weather. So that's what's falling from the sky. We look at the Storm Prediction Center for today. Some of this could change. I mean, I think this line of storms, not trying to freak anybody out, but in northern Ohio, maybe areas of western PA could pack a punch overnight tonight. Now, we could get some storms later this afternoon, this evening, but I think overnight tonight is actually when it could be its worst. But definitely have a piece of energy flying with this flow on top of this ridge that I just showed you. So we have a slight risk, and we have basically mid-level flow providing plenty of lift, a big-time moisture return that kind of comes into this area. And then we have the ingredients for severe weather, and I think we're going to have a line of storms that sweeps through this slight risk. Got a little bit of a severe weather risk in North Dakota too today, with another piece of energy flying down with this westerly flow on top of this ridge. Tornado threat, you got a 2% risk in Detroit, Cleveland, and everybody in between in this green area. 2% risk of a tornado. I think the wind threat will be the biggest threat today. If this somehow upgrades to an enhanced risk, it'll be driven off wind for sure. But right now, just that 15% risk of winds exceeding 50 knots or higher. It's 55 to 60 miles per hour. I wouldn't be surprised they throw in a hatched risk of wind somewhere in a very small area here in northern or northeast Ohio. We'll watch for that in the later Storm Prediction Center updates. Hail threat, just a 5% risk in both of these areas. So we got to watch for a damaging wind threat. We're going to get more detail on that for you folks in Ohio and Pennsylvania. 2 areas to watch for flash flooding has a slight risk. In the yellow, that is at least a 15% risk of flash flood guidance being met. This is because of the remnants of Harold, and this is because of our line of storms and steady stream of basically moisture is going to flow into this area, the Ohio Valley, Great Lakes region, throughout the day today, especially later this afternoon to the overnight period. So we'll watch for some flash flooding with this. Watches, warnings, advisories. It's not going to be quite as hot for Texas today, as this ridge has somewhat shifted, and it is shifting a little bit further. It's kind of bulging northward and then shifting northeast somewhat. So basically, you got the entire state of Missouri, Iowa, Illinois, pretty much Indiana, all of western Kentucky, the western counties of Tennessee, almost the entire state of Mississippi, a large chunk of Alabama, the entire western panhandle of Florida, all of Louisiana, all of Arkansas, and the eastern sections of Nebraska, Kansas, and Oklahoma. Excessive heat warnings. This is nothing new. You guys have been experiencing some brutal heat over the last few days. Some of probably the worst heat you guys maybe have experienced in a few years. You guys gotta let me know if that's true, but I'm assuming that. But it's very dry. I think Houston got their first rainfall yesterday in weeks. But there's certain areas in central Texas that have not seen rain in almost the entire summer. So we need the rain. Same thing with Louisiana. South of Mississippi is getting very dry. So it's really unfortunate. What's saving the Northeast and the Carolinas today is a backdoor cold front with a trough that came through, a little bit of cool, dry air on the eastern side of the Appalachian Mountains. So we'll talk about that here in a second. So this is the 10-day outlook okay, temperature-wise. So this runs from the 28th of August through the 1st of September. So we already got September in view on these models and things like that. So, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist, right? The areas in blue, that's a chance of below average temperatures. The more you get into this darker blue, that means there's a higher chance of below average temperatures. Notice this is starting to ooze into Arkansas, fully into Missouri, even in the areas of Oklahoma and Kansas. Fortunately, you folks in Texas, Louisiana, still above average temperatures predicted. There's going to be a tight boundary. This is getting into North Georgia, the Carolinas. Now, is this going to be colder than average, like temperatures, only in the 70s for highs and lows in the 50s and 40s for us in the Mid-South and Deep South? No, it is not. At least I don't think it is. This is because of consistent troughing over the eastern U.S., but I don't think this is that cold front that we're really looking for. That could change, okay? I'm actually going to talk about this more tonight if I can get a video in, so stay tuned if you're interested. Mitch, when is this heat going to end? When are we going to get a cool down? I'm looking for some fall weather so I can go up my attic and pull down all my fall stuff for Labor Day weekend like I'm going to do regardless of the temperature. So we're going to figure this one out for you and then give you an extensive update on the tropics tonight, and we will in this video too. But the southeast today, not a whole lot to speak on. You got that backdoor cold front. You could spark some shower activity off the coast of Georgia and South Carolina. This could actually drift into northeast Florida. But a very isolated activity in Florida today. Just some pop-up downpours are possible. Nothing really crazy for anybody today whatsoever. Maybe when you get into the overnight hours, the Panhandle of Florida could experience some downpours, maybe a storm. But outside of that, nothing to really speak on. Okay. But we look at temperatures today. These are dew points, not temperatures. If you notice, if you're in like the upstate of South Carolina and definitely in North Carolina, you notice you're waking up to it feels a little bit more dry out there, less humidity. That's because this backdoor cold front is working through. It'll make it all the way into eastern Georgia, northeast Georgia. So your dew points will actually drop through most of the day, and you'll actually get a pool of very dry air. By about the afternoon time frame, dew points could drop all the way down to the upper 50s, all the way as far southwest as Columbia, South Carolina. Certainly in the middle of North Carolina, dew points might get as low as the upper 40s. This is very temporary, guys. This will allow temperatures to be cooler today just because it's a backdoor cold front. So it'll feel nicer in South Carolina than it does in Tennessee today. A very low humidity, and you'll notice a difference compared to the last couple of days in the Carolinas for sure. This will allow temperatures to drop down to a pretty comfortable level, probably tonight into tomorrow morning, and it will allow for a pretty nice evening. So if you got any outdoor activities for your Wednesday night in the Carolinas, I'm betting, especially central to the PD of South Carolina, North Carolina, northeastward, I'm betting it's going to be a pretty nice night. I wouldn't wait till this weekend to maybe go out on the town. Not go on a town, but maybe take your wife on a date night or whatever it may be. Do something outdoor. Enjoy it tonight because the heat turns around, builds right back in, and the humidity tomorrow into the weekend. This weekend's just going to be blazing hot. I got a soccer game Saturday, and most of the kids aren't going to be able to make it because of the heat. And yeah, it's going to hit 102 in Columbia. It's just not... It's not fun for playing a high cardio sport like soccer, I tell you that. But anyways, the Northeast today, most of the Northeast quiet, but here comes that big moist return with this flow around this ridge of high pressure. So you're waking up to some pretty dry conditions in Buffalo, Erie, but I think as early as early afternoon, you'll get some rounds of heavy rain that starts to move through Buffalo, the Finger Lakes region, southern tier, northern section of PA. And then I think the storm activity could really become larger as we get into Erie, maybe this evening. And then as we get out of southern Ontario, we will watch a line of storms that potentially rumbles over Lake Erie. And then this area of storms could be quite intense tonight. So we're actually going to go on and zoom in on this. But I want to let you guys know if you're in the southern tier of New York State, western New York State, and then the northern half of PA, a pretty rainy overnight hours. It'll kind of come in waves, and some showers can make it all the way into maybe Western Mass, maybe Connecticut by the time I'm waking up tomorrow morning for sure. It could be waking up to some light showers in New York City, Long Island. But let's go on and zoom in on Ohio and areas of Western PA because I think this could be a big deal later tonight. Starting off this morning, some showers could drift into Northwest PA. I like to call it Northeast PA sometimes. I like to call Western PA, Eastern PA sometimes. So if I do that, correct me in the comments. I've done it before. But we keep this rolling here, and here's Lake Erie, and here comes these storms. Could get quite active around Erie sometime late afternoon, evening time frame, right around dinner time. These could continue to drag south. They could make it all the way to Pittsburgh, affect areas of western PA. But this is the storms I'm watching. Notice it's around 9 to 10 p.m. Okay, these storms start rumbling over the lake here, and then they start affecting areas along the Highway 90 corridor, Interstate 90. They start to really slam the northeast portions of Ohio. You got to watch out. These ride down highways 11, get down to Youngstown, maybe just after midnight, start to affect Cleveland. And it kind of comes in a very odd motion. The stronger these systems are, the more they work against the current of the ridge. So the more they try to tuck inward. All right. So it's almost like they're trying to find a weakness in that ridge of high pressure to the west so they can turn as quickly as possible. So I would watch out, in Cleveland, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, some big storms could roll down. Could go to bed tonight. Nothing going on. You're thinking, where are these storms these meteorologists are talking about? And then overnight, you just get woken up by a huge rumble of thunder. Your dogs start barking. It could be a night like that. These could be severe warned. It could be a nasty line of storms. So this is potentially what could look like around 3 or 4 a.m. These are, rumbling through Cleveland, Akron, getting down to Canton. All these communities, eventually making it all the way to the western, kind of the northern panhandle of the West Virginia area. Sometime in the wee hours of the morning, these could still be packing a punch. They could be losing some steam, though, as it's the morning time frame. But if you live in West Virginia, the northern half of West Virginia, you could be waking up to a line of storms tomorrow, and these storms are still heading on down Interstate 77, affecting areas along the Interstate 70 corridor to the Wheeling area of West Virginia. So please be careful with these storms later on tonight, especially. And if you look at the winds, remember these are in 1 hour intervals. So if you see these little weird gaps here, don't take it serious. In between these gaps of green, you could get a lot of wind too. So this indicates that line of storms. So you could get some 40, maybe 45, 50 mile per hour wind gusts in this corridor of storms right here. And I know I didn't mention much of Pennsylvania there, but this line of storms could very well be a little bit further east into western PA. So if you live down that Interstate 79 corridor, Youngstown, I know that's in Ohio, but what is that, Meadville, down to Pittsburgh, not a whole lot of bigger towns in that area. But, if you're in western PA, definitely be careful with these storms too. It could very well affect your area. But this kind of latest long-range HRRR model picks up on this line of storms pretty well. Then the updraft helicity swath, because there is a little bit of a chance for some spin-ups in this line of storms, picks up on these storms rotating big time. But don't get so bright-eyed on these highlighted colors. That does not mean we're automatically going to get a tornado outbreak in northeast and eastern Ohio. That just means that some of these storms will be spinning. But does that mean they're going to latch to the ground, be a tornado? Not necessarily, but we need to watch for some embedded tornado warnings with this line of storms. That's why it's important to have alerts set up on your phone. And so, you can get that, that burn, right in the middle of the night that'll startle the heck out of you, but at the same time could save your life. So definitely be prepared for that. But let's move to the south central U.S. Not a whole lot going on today. The remnants of I keep wanting to say Franklin. The remnants of Harold is rumbling through here and deep in western areas and southwest sections of Texas. Will just bring some light to moderate rain, and this rain will take over most of southern and especially southwest sections of New Mexico throughout the afternoon, where some light and moderate rain could form. Maybe some heavier little spurts of rain could get going here in southern areas of New Mexico also. We'll watch for that. Outside of that, everybody else is just hot and stagnant. Flowless air, just miserably hot. You guys know the deal. No different than the last couple of days. The air temperatures might be a tick lower, but it's not going to be much of a difference just because of the high humidity. And the heat indices will be well over the air temperatures in areas of Louisiana. I think areas of Louisiana and eastern Texas could be brutally hot today, with the heat index being well over 115 degrees in certain areas. One area that's been very, very hot also, it's a little bit further north, is Missouri, areas of Iowa, Illinois, and surrounding regions. So your air temperature today could hit 100 in many areas, but for the most part, widespread mid to upper 90s. Which with your dew points that's basically been in the upper 70s to 80s, which is oppressive tropical air. If you look at the apparent temperature, which is your heat index, this is what it could potentially be. I mean, this is just right here. This is just lunchtime. Okay, heat indices already well over 110 degrees for many areas. Once you get to the hottest part of the day, guys, the heat index could be over 115 degrees in St. Louis, over 105 to 110 in Kansas City, getting to 110 in Chicago. Just brutally hot air. 110 down in Memphis, 115 plus in areas of central Arkansas. I mean, it's getting hot into Indiana too. Okay, it's just, we got to get rid of this. We got to get rid of this. Is just I'm annoyed for you guys. I really am. But the north central U.S., we've already talked about Ohio. We'll watch for some strong storms. I wouldn't be surprised we get a pretty intense supercell or two up here in northern areas of North Dakota. So if you live in the northern terrain of North Dakota, could get some intense storms up here today. Then you're basically at the far northern portion of this ridge where basically the flow is setting up. So definitely be aware of any strong to severe storms in northern North Dakota today. Outside of that, not a whole lot going on, guys. Not a whole lot at all. Most of the rain will be up in Canada, north of Minnesota, and the Dakotas and the UP. But it's pretty quiet. Not a whole lot going on besides that. And then these storms in Ohio and areas of Pennsylvania. The western U.S., a little bit quieter today. But you will get the remnants of, of Harold that will basically make its way into the southwest. We already mentioned this. And then it will get picked up by the flow on the western side of this ridge, which is basically rumbling through this region right here. So basically all this energy right here is going to get picked up by this flow and start heading northward. And as it does, that mixed with the fact that you already got a pretty stout flow on this side of the ridge, it's going to provide a pretty decent lifting mechanism for a lot of showers and storms that really get going in areas of Utah, western Colorado, northern, especially Arizona. You could have some intense storms in southern Arizona, and just another day of some showers and storms in the Four Corners region for sure. So definitely be aware of this, and you can actually see the spin of the leftover of Harold in this region. Good bit of rain could fall in southern sections of New Mexico today. Some areas could get over an inch of rain, so watch out for some flash flooding if you live in this region. Definitely a pretty dry area on average, but you guys could definitely get a lot of rain today, so definitely be careful. Temperatures, you can see the boundary, right, of this ridge. You go from mid to upper 90s in central sections of Wisconsin to just the 60s and 70s in the UP of Michigan. That's a relatively short distance. I mean, look at Michigan. Well into the 90s all the way into central Michigan, and then you go to the far northern tip of Michigan before you get into the UP, 60s and 70s for highs. Big time boundary. It's the clashing between troughing and ridging. And two boundaries, basically the boundary setting up between two different air masses. Pretty wild to see, but it's not unusual. This gigantic ridge is unusual for this time of the year, though. But anyways, 60s and 70s for the Northeast. Cooler for the Carolinas with this backdoor cold front, but still pretty warm. And then just the dominating high pressure over this portion of the country will keep you guys just pretty much boiling alive out here. So hopefully we can get rid of this soon. The western U.S., cooler than average for the most part. It's downright chilly in areas of Oregon and Washington State this morning. Definitely feels like a fall morning in this portion of the country. So let's talk about the tropics. All right. See if we can muster up enough energy to finish this strong. Update on the tropics. This is technically the 5 a.m. update. I know it says 2 a.m., but this is the latest 5 a.m. But it always shows that on the 7-day graphical outlook here. We're still watching this wave that's is starting to emerge in the middle portion of the tropical Atlantic. Has a 40% chance to develop. We call this Invest 92L. I don't think it's going to do really anything. And then we got the leftovers of Emily, which is going to try... or it's going to try to redevelop into a tropical storm. But either way, it's a fish storm, not going to bother anybody. You can see Harold over here. We've already talked about it, just some leftover rains for areas of the south central U.S. and southwest. And we got Franklin. Franklin will become the dominating storyline in the tropics for the foreseeable future. There's a chance that Franklin really won't bother anybody after it's gets north of the Dominican Republic. Like literally nobody. But there is also a chance it could hit Bermuda. It could affect Nova Scotia. And there's an extreme outside chance that it could directly impact the eastern U.S. But the chances are very low. A trough digs down and kind of saves the U.S. from being impacted. But you cannot rule out the possibility. And then we're watching some energy in the eastern Pacific could head on over into the western Caribbean and have a chance to develop. Okay, just be careful what you believe and what you're hearing about that, but we will briefly talk about that in this video. Franklin is a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm, 1,000 millibar low pressure storm, about to make impact on the southern coastline of the Dominican Republic. And if we take a look at him right now, most of its convection is shunted off, I would say more so to the eastern side of the storm. It's been dealing with some westerly flow on top of the storm that's affecting it with shear. Because of this upper level low that we're about to talk about. This upper trough that we're going to talk about. So you got a steady stream of moisture, especially for the eastern half of the Dominican Republic. In fact, you look at that on radar. We can only look at the radar out of Puerto Rico, and but it is in range. It does show a steady stream of moisture over extreme eastern areas of the Dominican Republic. But there's probably a lot more rain over areas of the Dominican Republic that's showing up than what's actually that's showing up here than what you actually see. Just because the Puerto Rico radar does not extend that far west, so just remember that here. So there's likely a lot more activity ongoing in this region than you're actually seeing here. So let's get that back off the screen, and okay, we're everywhere here. So we'll get this back off and we'll roll. And so you can see it just got done popping off a pretty intense area of convection, but it's kind of chilling out a little bit this morning. But we'll see. It looks like there's another area of convection that's about to explode here right over areas of right off the southern coastline of Haiti and the western Dominican Republic. So we actually look at the latest update from Franklin from the National Hurricane Center. It's a 50-mile-per-hour storm right now, moving north at about 10 miles per hour. It'll make a landfall. Maybe by the time I'm done with this video, it's literally about to make landfall. Tropical storm warnings up in the blue. And then we even got some tropical storm warnings up for the extreme southeast sections of the Bahamas. And this is forecast to remain a tropical storm all the way until probably Friday, and then maybe sometime this weekend it will try to develop into a hurricane, but it will drift. And the National Hurricane Center is very confident on this, and I'll talk about why. It will drift back eastward and then turn northward pretty abruptly, potentially. As it feels a weakness, it gets stronger, the shear lightens up, and then this is when we really watch Bermuda next week. It will turn into a hurricane, and we need to watch this. So what's causing kind of the weird fluctuation with the steering of Franklin? I'll tell you why here. You see this area of blue and even green right here digging down right into this region. That is what we call an upper trough. So this is digging down, and you got flow that's surging down from the northeast, and then it dips down. Then you got flow that's coming out the west or a west-southwest. So this is affecting the storm right now with shear out the west, a westerly flow, but is also steering this and is what actually yanked this from continuing to go and head deeper into the Caribbean, and what caused Franklin to actually turn north. And we've been talking about this a lot. So you see the steering currents going like this, and then it turns around and goes like this. So this helps to basically yank this storm northward. So I'm going to do a lot of drawing here for a couple minutes, and hopefully I don't confuse anybody, but keep an eye on the L right here, and keep an eye basically on this blue that you're seeing on your screen, okay? That means a lot on, me trying to explain what it's going to do. And my goal is to always explain this in a way where you guys can understand. Of course, I'm always getting better. And there was a time a couple years ago when I was horrible at it. But that is always my goal, to explain this in a way where you guys as the audience can understand. So this will make landfall here in the next hour or so in the Dominican Republic. By the time we get into this evening, potentially or overnight tonight, this will emerge on the northern side of the Dominican Republic, all right? But you still see this flow, this upper trough, is still digging all the way over the Yucatan Peninsula. And this is still providing a lot of shear on the northern side, westerly flow. Western leads, we can call it. on top of what is Franklin. What will be Franklin as it gets to the other side of the Dominican Republic? That's a big question. Okay, there's a lot of higher terrain, and tropical systems do not like land for one, and they certainly do not like higher terrain. We call areas of Cuba and the Dominican Republic the shredder, because you got higher mountaintops and it rolls over these areas, and these tropical systems just basically get shredded. So this continues to move here. It's still being affected by this troughing. Okay, and there's still, even as this breaks off, you see this upper trough breaking off. You see some light flow into here. Those blues are starting to kind of lessen somewhat. You still have a stout flow of westerlies going like this. So this flow out the west is basically, you see these streamlines pulling this low pressure back east. So that's why if I keep this going, you see that L moving back east. So it's like, wow, what is this thing doing? Okay, so it's heading east because you see this blue affecting the storm. Don't focus on the millibar low pressure, okay? I know you're thinking this thing is not strengthening at all. Why are they saying it's going to be a hurricane by Friday? Don't focus on that right now. Let's focus on the steering currents, okay? And then all of a sudden, you see these blues, how it basically cuts off. That means that our flow weakens, our shear weakens, and two things happen. One, it begins to feel a weakness. So it begins to inch northward and begins to feel that weakness, and then there's no real stout westerly flow. And if you see these, you see this flow right in here, you see these streamlines on your screen going like this and then going like that. That is another very weak upper trough, okay? And this is actually going to help also to pull this northward too, along with the fact that this is going to be a strengthening storm. Strengthening storms want to gain more latitude, if that makes any sense. A stronger storm's always going to want to turn further north. It'll always fight against the ridge more. It'll always actively seek out, it's not like it's intentional, but it'll always actively seek out the weakness in the flow out there. So this keeps going, finds that weakness, and it's heading north at this point. And you're thinking, oh no, this looks like it's about to head towards the southeast coastline. Well, not so fast. That's not going to be the case. So it keeps on. There's a weakness here. It's feeling this weakness. It's heading north. It's probably strengthening at this point, maybe as high as a Category 2, Category 3 hurricane. And this continues to head north. And you're thinking, okay, well, what is this going to do? Okay, so you keep watching this. We take a larger look at this, and watch out. Bermuda's right in here. There's at the same time, there's an upper trough digging right down here. So there's another trough setting up. By the way, we have to watch this that could deliver some much cooler than average temperatures across the eastern U.S. It feels this, okay? It feels this upper trough right here. You see these streamlines? It feels these, and then this helps take this. Man, that's a terrible circle. Oof. It takes this, okay? I don't know why my hands are shaking so much. And then yanks it back out to sea. This happens a lot. It happens a lot. So this upper trough digging down helps take whatever is of Franklin and then yanks it out to sea. Now, we always got to watch Nova Scotia in setups like this, because sometimes it doesn't yank it out far enough and it still affects Nova Scotia. So it feels it, gets very close to Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, but then it heads out to sea. So that is what's steering this, okay? Now, that upper trough is actually going to try to pull some moisture over Central America too. So we need to watch that. But if we take a look at some model guidance, and I got to work my way through this quick because I got to get my kids to school. There's your low pressure, right? The GFS says, hey, there's that kind of nudge eastward, and then it feels that weakness. Strengthens pretty quick. I mean, all the way, and it gets very close to Bermuda. Scrapes it. Definitely hits it with some outer bands. This gets early to midway next week. I mean, this thing's all the way down to a 966 millibar low pressure hurricane, but it's nothing but a fish storm. Gets very close to Bermuda, though. European does the same thing. Nudges it east. Strengthens this weekend. Getting into early next week. Still strengthening. Basically almost gets it down to the same position in the same millibar low pressure hurricane as the GFS, as the European, and narrowly misses Bermuda, heads out to sea. But it gets very close to Newfoundland. Okay? Very, very close. In fact, it affects it. So we look at the European ensemble. This is the signal about 5 days out. Takes us all the way through, I believe, about Sunday evening. Strong signal that we're going to get a stronger Franklin in the future. Weak signal on this tropical system that could emerge into the Western Caribbean from the moisture getting pulled up from this upper trough over Central America and the Western Caribbean. That's a weak signal. So don't believe all this stuff you're hearing about a huge hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. Okay? Just be careful. It's not a shot at anybody. It's not. I respect even some of the people who do it. I'm friends with some of the people who do it, but just be careful. Okay? We try to stay level-headed on this channel and keep it real with you guys, but we'll continue to keep you guys updated. I hope all that made sense to you guys. I'll continue to get better at explaining it, but God bless all y'all. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.